if people with questions, if you could come to the microphones, which are at the side, and identify yourselves. The sessions are being recorded. That would be great. Just who you are, where you're from.
Hi, my name is Mark Gorman. I'm a cancer survivor and patient advocate. Dr. Brenner's talk raises a question of what I think is a gap in the planning for this meeting and actually this whole topic in terms of the stakeholder group that's not here. Excuse me. I've thought about this stuff for a long, long time. I'm a very seasoned advocate. There are a number of people in this room who know me pretty well. I don't think it's any longer appropriate when we're talking about the kinds of things that Dr. Brenner was talking about to think of the pharmaceutical stakeholder as the only industry stakeholder. Pharmaceutical industry does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in the context of the financial system. And without bringing those stakeholders into the conversation, we're going to have an incomplete dialogue. Martin Shkreli is the poster boy of like bad pharmaceutical, but he's not a traditional pharmaceutical actor. I think it's important to try to think about different ways about how cancer care, not just the research, but care from the perspective of patients, is going to be financed in a way that will be meaningful for everybody who's dealing with this disease.
So I will just say that the conference organizers couldn't agree with you more. Your points are very well taken. I'm sure we could have done an even better job, but I think later on in the session you will hear, not from enough patients, but you will hear a session on how we need to educate patients and families and do a better job to prepare the healthcare delivery system for evaluating and delivering these very challenging treatments.
Well, that's, there's the larger point about bringing the financial services industry separate from the pharmaceutical industry as active participants in all of these kinds of conversations.
Malcolm, I have a quick question about. Oh, sure.
That's important.
Oh, sure.
So I'm sorry, I'm going to take this from Michael, but you're absolutely correct. And as a matter of fact, the organizing committee made it very important point to not only address the science, the regulatory, but we have insurance companies here, we have advocacy, we have CMS. So the payers and the advocacy are within the meeting to try to address as much as possible, because we really believe that there is no sustainability in this field if the payers is not going to be a part of this policy addressing. Now, if there are other issues, I think the Cancer Policy Forum would love to hear from it and would like to include more people within this kind of discussion in the future if we miss or the organizing committee missed any of that.
I don't want to take up our time with the debate here. Let's just talk more. I mean, I've been in some meetings over the years where the issue I'm talking about has actually been addressed. So, let's talk about it.
Malcolm, a quick question for you. Do you find, and not necessarily your own university, but other universities, in out-licensing IP, are they dealing with it differently when it's a drug versus a cellular therapy? To the point you're making, is there a recognition that the investment environment out there is drastically different for traditional drug versus cellular therapies?
Yeah, I think that's been an evolving process. So initially, very much so, oddly enough. So the understanding was there'd be relatively little paid upfront, so that encouraged investment, with the sort of licensing fees delayed much longer. But with the success of the CD19 cars and the sort of large sums of money that have been bandied about, unfortunately, there's a sort of tendency now to look at them more like ordinary drugs and require almost higher payments up front, which I think is a mistake because it's a long process, and we would much rather have the time to develop them in the right way rather than in the fastest way.
So you think we need to maintain that low cost up front, look for the long run, given the slow progression of the therapies and the uncertainties of them?
Our president would, I mean, not the, our president of our university would disagree with that, but
Right.
that's what I think, yes.
So I'm not asking him, though. Okay, good. Thank you, or her.
Richard Woodman, Novartis Oncology. I was very impressed by a common theme that I saw across all the presentations, and which is the combination approach is critical to the ultimate success of immuno-oncology therapies. I'd like to ask any of the panel about the therapeutic strategy related to small molecules targeted therapy. There are many examples where these agents have immune modulatory effects. Do the panel see that as an important component of the therapeutic strategies moving forward in terms of combination therapy?
I think that small molecule therapies can have opposing effects in terms of the immune system. So obviously, there are some that may be lymphodepleting that could lead to immune compromise and make it difficult for an immunotherapy to work. On the other hand, it's been shown by a number of groups, most notably a group in Paris from Laurence Zidvogel and Guido Kramer, that certain types of chemotherapy induce what's called immunogenic cell death, in which the killing of the tumor cells by the chemotherapy releases antigens and acts as a kind of internal vaccine. And so it's possible, for example, that that type of chemotherapy might synergize with something like anti-PD-1 or other types of checkpoint blockade, where now you're allowing the immune system, the immune response that's induced by killing the tumor cells to now contribute to the regression or rejection of the tumor. So I think one has to be very selective and look at the effects of these small molecules on the immune system, and which could be positive or negative.
I think the answer will be different for different tumor types too. I think that for lung cancers, the patients that we use targeted therapies are the ones that are least likely to respond to immunotherapy, and the notion of can you convert that tumor to a more immunogenic environment with small molecules has not been really shown yet. So whereas in melanoma, perhaps there's been some data to suggest some synergies, but in terms of what certain small molecules can do to T cells and how to shape that T cell response in a preferential way, I think that's certainly feasible, but it's hard to do those sorts of clinical studies to determine what the right dose, what the right schedule, just difficult to do.
Thank you very much to the panelists. We're going to get everyone to the coffee break. We're about 10 minutes behind. Let's reconvene at 10:20 as opposed to the originally scheduled 10:15.